There are no happy former Trump administration officials. Either you get fired, you resign, you speak out against them, you end up broke, you end up a criminal, or you end up whatever Rudy Giuliani is at this point. I don't know, like a ghoul. But it doesn't end well when you associate yourself with Donald Trump. And that is a reality that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are now waking up to, according to a MAGA outlet. It is the beginning of the end for both of them, with firings coming soon. We are going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, we know that Pam Bondi, through this administration, has screwed Donald Trump with her handling of the Epstein files, but the pressure on her is only about to get worse, as Robert Garcia is saying right here.
Well, again, the Oversight Investigation and the Oversight Committee is leading the Epstein investigation. And so our work is ongoing every single day. Let me just start by sharing also the difference. So we have a law now that's been signed by the president that is asking the DOJ to release the files. Incredibly important for all the members to be on record and for this to sail forward. We also have a subpoena that was passed by the Oversight Committee that forced the hand of all the release of these documents, including the Department of Justice, that we have been seeing over the last few weeks and months, and that will continue to produce documents. The difference is we know that the DOJ right now is somehow claiming there's going to be this new investigation or this kind of sham look at Democrats out of the Southern District of New York, which Pam Bondi, of course, announced recently. And there's concern that the language in the legislation speaks to there being a possible look at, well, we may not release documents if there is an active investigation going, which of course is just a deflection on behalf of the Department of Justice. The subpoena doesn't have that language. So even if Pam Bondi wants to use that language to slow down the release of documents, she can't do the same for the subpoena because it does not include that language. And so she has to release the documents and all of the files regardless of a sham investigation. And now there are two strong efforts to ensure that we get those. As far as what's next on oversight, we're now looking at the bank records. We're looking at what were the financial crimes that were happening. Who and what powerful men pay these enormous sums of money to rape and abuse women? And that's what's next for the committee.
I think that it is important to keep in mind that the vote that Congress took to force the release of the Epstein files was not simply just a move to force the release of the Epstein files. It was also a public denunciation of Pam Bondi, saying that she is and was a liar when she said, case closed, don't pay attention, just move on, let's not talk about Epstein. Bondi was lying then, and that is evidenced by her own admission that she's looking into Bill Clinton or Reid Hoffman or Larry Summers, saying, essentially, there is more to go after. But she didn't want to. And why? Because she was protecting Donald Trump and wanted to keep Epstein out of the news. But she can't do that anymore, and she can't even answer for why she wouldn't investigate further. And when she was asked, it set up the reason why Donald Trump is so furious with her.
Madam Attorney General, do you mean that you will provide all the files by 30 days?
We will follow the law. The law passed both chambers last evening. It has not yet been signed, but we will continue to follow the law, again, while protecting victims, but also providing maximum transparency.
Madam Attorney General, the DOJ statement earlier this year saying that the files would not release mentioned the fact that the review of the documents and the evidence did not suggest that any additional investigation of third parties was warranted. What changed since then that you launched this investigation?
Information that has come for information. There's information that new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads. If there are any victims, we encourage all victims to come forward, and we will continue to provide maximum transparency under the law.
Pam Bondi still doesn't have an answer. She doesn't have a reason why she closed the Epstein investigation. She doesn't have a reason why she did not inquire about the executives at JP Morgan Chase who were, in their words, helping to sanitize Epstein's books as he was moving around billions of dollars to run his child sex trafficking ring. She didn't look into any of that. She closed the case because she didn't want Donald Trump to have to face down his biggest issue yet, the biggest scandal we have ever seen in either of his presidencies, in any presidency ever. Bondi wanted it quiet, but she hasn't done that, and neither has Kash Patel, and it is why, according to a MAGA outlet, after the midterms, it's going to be over for him. Bondi and Patel in purgatory and waiting to be fired, pro-Trump outlet. A source close to the White House expects Donald Trump to fire Attorney General Pam Bondi or FBI Director Kash Patel following the midterm elections. On Friday, Daily Signal correspondent Tony Kinnett told Real America's Voice that Bondi had backed herself into this corner due to her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Several MAGA influencers were duped when Bondi invited them to the White House in February, promising new information on Epstein. It is just a matter of time before Pam Bondi is shown the door, Real America's Voice host David Brody asked the correspondent during the Friday interview. Regarding the situation with Pam Bondi, she put herself here, Kinnett explained. She did. When she got out in February and she handed to my friends, including Jack Posobiec, a binder that contained nothing, and then she trotted him out and humiliated him for no reason. And when you campaign on, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to release everything, he continued, you have now set yourself a standard you can't walk away from. It didn't matter what there was in the files because you've already promised what's in the files. You've already promised all of those names are in the files, so you better deliver. Welcome to purgatory. And so, yeah, I do think the Trump administration, maybe after the 2026 midterms, might dismiss Bondi or Patel because when you overpromise and you underdeliver, people are rightly outraged. There's a couple things that are interesting to me about this, aside from just the obvious fact that those close to the White House, MAGA reporters, think that Pam Bondi or Kash Patel, but likely Bondi, are on the chopping block. The first thing that I find interesting is that they still blame Pam Bondi, which is really great news to Donald Trump because if he fires Pam Bondi, then he can say the blame is on her. She mishandled the release. And of course, Donald Trump and all of MAGA are trying to rewrite this history right now. We know that to be the case. Donald Trump has already said that the only reason these files are released or are going to be released, even though they're going to put every roadblock in place to stop their release, but he said there is only transparency because he told the House and the Senate to vote for their release. Of course, we know that's not the case. The only reason the House and the Senate voted for their release is because Donald Trump is too weak to tell them not to, and he has lost all of the power that his presidency had a few months ago. Certainly his grip over MAGA is gone. John Thune has no power. Mike Johnson has no power. But now, Pam Bondi, it's right. She has backed herself into this corner where Donald Trump can blame her for the mishandling of these files, and he can try to wash his hands of the whole situation and get MAGA back in line with him on the only issue that he has ever been underwater with his base on. MAGA disapproves of how Donald Trump has handled the release of the Epstein files or the non-release of the Epstein files, and so if he can shift that blame to Bondi, why wouldn't he fire her? It would be a good strategic move for Donald Trump. Now, I'm not trying to give Donald Trump strategy advice, but I'm just saying it makes sense why at this point he would want to fire Pam Bondi. I also find it interesting that these guys, they are mad at Pam Bondi for her over-promising and under-delivering when it came to that ridiculous stunt that they pulled at the White House with the Epstein files folder, and oh my God, there's nothing in it. You remember those flight logs? It was like Epstein flight logs that were already public, but they crossed Trump's name out. They crossed Donald Trump's name out. They didn't cross Ivanka Trump's name out because she rode on Epstein's plane as well. So Donald Trump was happy to embarrass his own daughter, but scratched his name out, which is just a whole nother bag of beans there. But Pam Bondi, it makes a lot of sense why they'd be upset with her if Donald Trump didn't exist. Donald Trump is the one who orchestrated all of this. And you took yourself for fools to think that Pam Bondi was going to give you any information when it all implicates Donald Trump? Who you should be upset with is Donald Trump. But the fact that the MAGA media that hasn't fully clocked to them, they're not fully aware of them getting played by Donald Trump, one, just goes to show their idiocy, but two, again, shows why it would make sense why Trump would want to fire Bondi to save himself from the biggest scandal in the history of the presidency. But of course, there are other reasons why Donald Trump should want to fire Pam Bondi, because she's failed at her job as Attorney General. Now, of course, he's wanted her to do that. We certainly don't, but Jasmine Crockett has been calling it all out, and Donald Trump's fake war on crime, this clip right here.
If we've learned anything this year is that congressional Republicans are more interested in serving Donald Trump than they are in serving their constituents. Over the past 10 months, they have given away permanent tax cuts to the wealthiest people on earth, demolished half of the White House, pardoned violent insurrectionists, significantly driven up cost of living across the country, and then given themselves a taxpayer-funded 8-week vacation, all so that they could delay as long as possible Congress voting to release the Epstein files. And now they're trying to gaslight you into believing that you should trust them on crime policy. They want you to believe that living in a police state is a good or normal thing. They want you to be okay with having armed soldiers and federal agents monitor you as you shop for groceries or take your children to school. They want you to think that you won't be affected. But we've already seen Americans detained, arrested, injured, and some nearly killed because of this administration's reckless approach to handling crime. And they're doing all of this without acknowledging the fact that Republican-led states are experiencing a murder and crime and violent crime crisis, and they have for the last 2 decades. The Republicans' murder state rates were 33% higher than Democratic state murder rates in both 21 and 2022. In fact, over the past 22 years, the Republican state murder rates were nearly a quarter higher compared to states that are led by Democrats. Even when you remove Democratic cities and counties from the Republican states' data, their murder rate is still nearly a quarter higher than states run by Democrats. Ms. Levine, how long have you studied crime?
You're going to have me show my age. Is that nice?
It doesn't show on your face, honey. That's all that matters.
Let's just say about 3 decades.
Okay, very good. So would you agree that factors like poverty, lax gun laws, and a lack of public services can lead to higher crime rates?
Yes, I agree with that.
MAGA politics is about subtraction, and Jasmine Crockett perfectly diagnoses this. They think that if they just take away or lock up or break down, that they'll eventually get to a bottom where everything is good. But unless you are breaking apart the systems that lead to mass incarceration, that lead to homelessness, that lead to crime, unless you are fixing those systems, ripping apart homeless encampments, locking people up for nothing, will not do anything to better our country. But they don't care. They just think that if they rip away, things will be fixed. Investment in community is what can fix broken systems in America. They don't get that. They don't care. But we do, and we're going to call it out. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.